Hello, welcome to this explainer. We're jumping straight into a really massive, system-wide question today. Are our eating habits undermining metabolic resilience? We're going to take a look under the biological hood of our bodies to figure out exactly what happens when our highly modern lifestyles just collide with our evolutionary programming. So, part 1, the modern biological mismatch.
Okay, let's dive right in. Basically, we're operating on two totally conflicting timelines here. On one hand, we inherited this incredible evolutionary metabolism, right? Full of organic resilience pathways, ancestral energy flows. It's a brilliant, highly tuned survival machine. But on the other hand, we are forcing this ancient machinery to survive in a completely synthetic modern environment. We're talking relentless metabolic strain, circadian disruption, and chronic inflammation. Because of this, our bodies are constantly firing off cellular distress signals simply because our modern environment looks absolutely nothing like what we were biologically designed for.
Just think about our typical daily cycle of, nutritional misalignment. For so many of us, the day starts with under-eating, maybe skipping breakfast entirely, surviving purely on coffee. But then, we hit a wall. We reach for highly palatable, hyper-flavored modern foods that literally hijacked our sensory-specific satiety. They essentially hack and override our body's natural fullness cues. This leads straight to what we call the 85-15 plate, where a meal is dominated by 85% processed starches and just 15% of those hyper-palatable extras. And the kicker? The cycle almost always ends in a massive late-night feast, meaning we are backloading all our calories at the exact moment our bodies are biologically trying to shut down and rest.
Now here's the truly terrifying part of all this. For a really long time, we don't feel a thing. It's this total illusion of tolerance. For literally decades, your pancreas might be silently ramping up insulin production just to force blood glucose into your cells, completely masking a steady decline in your insulin sensitivity. You could get routine blood work done in these early stages and everything looks totally fine. But beneath the surface, that metabolic strain is quietly, silently compounding. The fact that you don't have early clinical symptoms isn't a free pass. It's just proof of your body's incredible, though temporary, ability to compensate. That is, right up until you hit that hidden tipping point, and suddenly systemic exhaustion and arterial plaque make themselves known.
Let's move on to section 2, rethinking carbs and metabolism. The absolute most crucial thing to understand here is that not all carbs are created equal, not even close. Industrial, refined carbs have been stripped down into these tiny microparticles, which means they digest incredibly rapidly, causing severe, violent blood sugar spikes. But if you contrast that with intact whole foods, the natural structural matrix of fiber and protein is actually preserved. That physical structure acts like a brake on digestion, giving you a really controlled, steady release of energy. This is why just looking at the glycemic index alone is actually kind of misleading. You want to look at glycemic load. Glycemic load accounts for realistic portion sizes and the actual structure of the food. That is the metric that truly matters for your health.
And this brings us to a huge paradigm shift. We have to stop thinking of metabolism as just a simple calorie furnace. It is so much more than calories burned. It's this vast, highly interconnected network of biochemical processes. Take ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. It's not just fuel for moving your muscles. It is the core energy currency linking our mitochondrial hub to our signaling hub, which regulates your hormones, and our repair hub, which builds essential molecules. When we feed ourselves poorly, we aren't just putting on weight, we are actively tearing down this entire life-sustaining communication network inside our cells.
Which brings us to section 3, insulin resistance and overflow.
I want you to think of insulin as your body's ultimate traffic controller. Your pancreas secretes this hormone to safely route glucose exactly where it needs to go. Its top choices: your skeletal muscle to store glucose as glycogen, your liver for ongoing production management, and your adipose tissue for safe, long-term warehousing. But what happens when your cells just stop responding to this signal? This is often driven by excess visceral fat or chronic inflammation, and when it happens, this entire beautiful routing system just fundamentally fails.
So what actually happens when that safe storage in your subcutaneous fat gets completely full? Well, the system simply overflows. You get these toxic intracellular lipid intermediates spilling over, and they physically jam up the cellular machinery inside your liver, your skeletal muscle, your pancreas, and even your heart. This nasty spillover impairs how these organs function and completely blocks glucose from getting inside where it actually belongs.
There's actually a specific medical term for this overflow. It's called ectopic fat. To put it simply, ectopic fat is the highly dangerous accumulation of fat in places that aren't meant to store fat. It acts literally like sand thrown into the delicate gears of your metabolism. It physically blocks those insulin receptors we just talked about and drives some really aggressive systemic dysfunction throughout your entire body.
Let's zoom in on the liver for a second.
our primary hepatic traffic controller, just to see how this plays out in real life. Say you drink a sugary soda. You are delivering a massive, unprotected wave of liquid fructose straight to your liver. This absolutely overwhelms its capacity to process things, so the liver panics and is forced to rapidly convert those carbs into fatty acids. That's a highly destructive process called de novo lipogenesis. But on the flip side, what about the fructose in a whole apple? That fructose is tightly bound within a physical matrix of fiber and water. Because it's packaged that way naturally, absorption slows way down, allowing your liver to safely bypass that dangerous tipping point. The problem is, the damage doesn't stay confined to the liver. This persistent metabolic strain kicks off a sequential chronic vascular injury that we call the atherosclerotic cascade. It starts out totally silently with simple endothelial dysfunction. Then it slowly progresses to oxidative modification, immune activation, foam cell formation, and eventually full-blown plaque development lining your arteries. It is a silent, progressive injury quietly building up over decades.
And if you're wondering what pulls the trigger on that arterial cascade, it's a protein called ApoB, or apolipoprotein B. ApoB is this critical primary trigger protein attached to certain lipoproteins in your blood. When these ApoB-containing particles get stuck in your artery walls, a process that speeds up tremendously if you have insulin resistance, hypertension, or lead a sedentary lifestyle, they relentlessly drive the development of cardiovascular disease.
All right, moving to section 4, the circadian disruption.
So we know what we eat causes strain, but when we eat, that creates a very specific point of biological impact, the circadian collision. Think about it. As the sun goes down, our melatonin levels naturally rise to prep us for deep sleep. At that exact same time, our insulin sensitivity drops. So what happens if you drop a massive, heavy, carb-loaded late-night meal right at this intersection? Your metabolic efficiency just plummets. You're forcing your digestive system into high gear when your biology is desperately trying to shut down for the night. And across the board, this universally wrecks your overnight glucose control.
Section 5, building metabolic resilience.
Now, I know this all sounds a little grim, but there is incredibly good news here. We have a primary weapon in this fight: skeletal muscle, our body's ultimate disposal engine. Think of your muscle as a massively expandable glycogen vault. When you lift weights or do resistance training, you physically expand your body's structural capacity to store glucose safely. But honestly, it gets even better. Just the act of muscle contraction physically forces glucose out of your bloodstream via a pathway that completely bypasses the need for insulin. It's basically a biological superpower. A simple 10 to 20-minute walk after a meal can dramatically improve your blood sugar control, simply by getting those muscles moving.
Ultimately, the goal here isn't to force yourself onto some miserable, rigid diet. What we're really aiming for, the true benchmark of health, is metabolic flexibility. This is having the cellular resilience to seamlessly switch your fuel sources, like perfectly oiled gears. You want your body to smoothly transition back and forth between burning carbs and burning fat, depending entirely on what you're doing physically, what nutrients are available, and your physiological state. You want a system that is frictionless, adaptive, and highly efficient.
To actually achieve that flexibility, we look to the 4 pillars of resilience. Number 1 is nutrition, prioritizing whole, intact foods and avoiding those ultra-processed traps. Number 2 is physical activity, regular resistance training, and just consistent daily movement. Number 3 is sleep and recovery, aligning when you eat with the daylight and fiercely protecting that circadian rhythm. And number 4 is cardiovascular monitoring, actually tracking things like your ApoB, lipids, and glucose so you know exactly what's happening under your own hood.
So here is your call to action today. It's time to implement your metabolic blueprint. Step 1, choose whole, intact foods that actually respect your body's natural digestive speed. Step 2, make a commitment to move your body after you eat to naturally clear out that glucose. Step 3, cut out the late-night feasting and align your meals with daylight. And step 4, track your biomarkers so you aren't flying blind. It's absolute time to stop letting modern habits override our biology and time to start actively building our metabolic resilience. So my question to you is, what will you choose to put on your plate tonight to start rebuilding your biological infrastructure?
This video is only for informational purposes and not medical advice. Consult qualified medical practitioners or nutritionists for professional advice. This video is based on articles originally published on Inforjunction and produced using AI-assisted narration and video tools. For more informative and thought-provoking articles and videos, please visit Infojunction WordPress blog and YouTube channel.